Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video. We're continuing on with the outdoor encounter series that I've been doing, and this week I make some really rocky hills. And honestly, these are one of the favorite things I've ever made. They turned out excellent, and I've used them in a session, and they were fantastic. They were so cool that my party actually, when I brought out my mag board with everything set up on it, they all got out their cameras and started taking photos of it. So really pleased with the outcome, and I hope you enjoy this video. There's a lot of steps and there's a lot of materials that I use. If you want to find any of the materials, there'll be links in the description. But if you like what you see and you find value in it, please like, subscribe, and share with anyone who you think might also like these videos. Let's get right to it. The first thing we're going to want to do is actually make some rocks, and I did this by making some rock molds out of latex rubber. So find yourself some rocks and clean them up with some soapy water to get all the dirt out of all the nooks and crannies there. You don't want that to fill in any kind of details that you might miss when you do your coating with the latex rubber. I learned this method from Luke Towan. He has a great YouTube channel where he makes a lot of dioramas and kind of railroad type scenery, so go check him out for sure. After you've got your rocks all cleaned of any dirt and debris, you'll want to make sure that they're dry before applying the liquid latex. And I just dried them off with a rag. When selecting your rocks, make sure that you pick some rocks that are going to kind of fit the terrain kind of style you're looking for. If you want really rugged, rough rocks, or if you want more smooth rocks, just kind of pick them accordingly. I kind of wanted a mix of both, so that's what I've got here. I then protected my surface with some parchment paper and then got out the latex rubber from Woodland Scenics. This stuff is really awesome to work with, and the results from these rocks is really, really great. Using a very cheap brush, I kind of just dunked it in there and just applied it kind of in a stippling motion here. This first layer, you want to make sure you just get really good coverage and not worry about the thickness of it, because you're going to be applying multiple layers. You just want to make sure that you capture all the details, so make sure that you really work the brush into all the little grooves and nooks and crannies that rocks are abundant with, and just get a good coating. What you'll want to do is not coat the entire rock, but maybe just coat halfway down so you kind of get like a cup-shaped rock so you can fill it with plaster later. Allow those to completely dry before applying your next coat. The second coat, you don't need to really worry about getting it into all the nooks and crannies like you did with the first coat, because that's already taken care of. With the second coat, you want to start building up the thickness of this kind of rubber mold that you're making so it won't tear and everything when you peel it off and when you use it later. And when I applied all these next coats, what I did was I really paid attention to try and build up a thick bead on the edge, just so I'd have a little something to purchase with my fingers so I could peel it off easier at the end. And this actually worked out really well, but just get a really nice thick coat with the next layers. I ended up doing 5 total layers on mine, and that was plenty. It worked really well. After you've got all your layers on there, it's time to peel it off, and it actually peels really easily. I was very impressed with how easy this was to work with. Building up that bead again really helped me kind of roll my thumb across it and start peeling it up. I kind of got the edges up all the way around the rock and then just started peeling thoroughly from one side. And yeah, you just get really impressive rock molds afterwards. It's honestly so easy and very worth the time it takes to put all the coats on. And once I get it all the way peeled off here, you'll definitely see that kind of cup shape that I was talking about before. And this is just going to help us with our pour. You'll then want to prepare to pour the plaster into the molds. And prepping the molds is really easy. You just fill something with some sand, and then you just press the molds into the sand so they kind of have the exact level that you're looking for, because again, these are rocks. They're not, blocks, so they're going to not sit level on a flat surface, and you want your pour to really kind of sit level and get all of the detail that you're looking for. So just kind of push them in there into little divots in the sand to prepare for the pour of the plaster of Paris. Now, to kind of help them release, you can just get some water with a little bit of soap and spray it on there. Honestly, this step I found unnecessary for me, but if you do have trouble with your rock mold sticking to the actual latex mold, try using this. Like I said, the next time I did it, I didn't even use it and it was totally fine. But I mixed up the plaster of Paris to kind of be like this. It looks like melted ice cream, I guess. It's really runny, and this is just so we have really thin material to get into all the really small details that the rock molds have. Let them completely dry and then peel them off. You'll have some sand kind of lightly stick to the latex rubber. I just took a kind of a stiff brush and brushed it off. But you essentially just peel it away and then you're left with a really nice looking rock that's just ready to be painted. And you're left with a nice variety of rocks here. Now you can break these apart and just use parts of them. After I made these 5 molds, I actually went and made another handful using the exact same rocks that I used to make these. You just use different parts of it and get different textures. It's really great. I then started dry fitting the rocks over a brick of foam using my miniature to make sure that there was somewhere for him to stand easily. But you do this to get a good idea of what it'll look like when you have it on your table. And then you're going to be using multiple materials to kind of build out the skeleton of this hill. I used tinfoil and foam, and I hot glued them together, and then I hot glued the rocks right onto the tinfoil and the foam. And we do this for a very important reason. We're going to be applying Sculptamold over this whole thing to give the kind of round, organic looking shape to the hill. And Sculptamold takes a while to dry, and the thicker it is, the longer it takes to dry. So having a lot of the work already done and just applying a thin coat over top makes a really big difference. Sculptamold can be messy, so I put down some more parchment paper, and then I just started plopping on the Sculptamold, making sure to cover all the foam and all the tinfoil and slightly overlapping it over the rocks to make the rocks look like they were embedded into the earth. This is my first time ever working with Sculptamold, and I gotta say, I'm a big fan. I actually really enjoyed working with it. It's got its quirks, but once you kind of figure those out, it does a really good job of shaping and creating a really kind of cool earthy texture. The great thing about it is once it starts to dry slightly, you can just wet your finger and then smooth it out a little bit more in the areas that you want smoother and leave the rough areas rough. For me, this was the tops got smoother and the sides were left more rough because I was going to have a little bit more dirt exposed on the sides than I was on top. I then did one final pass smoothing out areas that I wanted to be smooth. The piece that I'm working on right now, I ended up adding to it, making it a little bit bigger because I did leave the backside just as a flat exposed edge of foam, thinking that I would just use it on the edge of my maps, but that was silly of me, so I ended up adding a little bit more onto it, as you'll see in the end. Without failure, I will always jump a step. I wanted to paint these all brown where the grass was going to be, but I got excited to put the grass on and put it on prematurely, and all the white shows through it. So I painted everywhere where the grass was going to be with brown, and then I painted all the rocks with gray. And then I did a dry brushing in my favorite color, parchment, a light tan, and it was time for me to switch to a new dry brushing brush. As you can see, my other one developed kind of a little bit of a flat top there. But this was a heavy brushing. I wanted them to appear mostly light because I wanted to ensure there'd be a really nice contrast between the rocks and the grass that would be on top of the hill. I then took a mixture of Mod Podge and water, probably about 50-50, and applied with a brush over all of the areas that I wanted there to be grass. Now on the sides, I didn't cover it in full coverage, but I did just kind of like bring it down a little bit to kind of show like kind of a natural, kind of earthy, slopey kind of look, I guess. I think it brings a lot more character to the piece, and I just think it looks cooler too. Then I just started to spoon on my grass mixture. You can find this grass mixture in the grass tile set video I did a couple of videos ago. It's on my channel. Go check it out if you haven't already. And speaking of my channel, thank you so much for everybody who's subscribed, liked, and commented. If you haven't, please consider subscribing. Be sure to like the video. It goes a long way in getting my videos noticed and inspires me to make more videos. Once that glue is dried, I go through and apply glue to all the exposed areas that I didn't apply it before for the dirt, and then I spoon on the dirt. Again, the dirt mixture is in that grass tile video if you want to check it out. I really like it. I think it looks really good, and these are starting to turn out to look really nice. I then took my favorite wash and watered it down slightly and did a wash over all of the rocks to give them a bit more contrast and give them a bit more depth, and they turned out to look really nice at the end. If you watched any of my previous videos where I've made this grass, you'll know that the grass is still soft and so is the dirt after you glue it on there. So you need to harden it. And the best way to do that is with a really watered down Mod Podge. Make sure you use matte Mod Podge in this because you don't want your grass to look glossy unless you're going for like a rainy look. But you just kind of drip it on there, make sure it gets all spread through. The consistency of your Mod Podge you want to be really watered down, honestly, like it's milk. Maybe even skim milk. I don't know, something a little bit more watery. And then just drip it on like so, and then just set it down and let it dry, and it will be good to handle and will stand up to being handled by our nerd hands, and everything will be good for a long run. Now you can honestly really call them done at this point, but honestly, if you want them to look more realistic, it's a good idea to add some embellishments. So I went through and just got a bunch of really tiny rocks and just kind of glued them randomly all over each of these rocky hills just to give them a bit more character, make them a bit more believable, and I think the overall look was really nice. I even took it a step further and added some grass tufts and flowers here and there just to make them a little bit more beautiful, but also just have, again, a bit more character and a bit more realism. And then the last thing I did was I went back over with some Mod Podge and covered up some seams that I noticed that didn't get really good coverage, and then just reapplied some grass over it, and then just took the glue and coated that again, just to make sure that I didn't have weird looking kind of like obvious evidence of crafting going on. And went through and covered those up with moss and dirt, and I even covered up some of them with flowers and some of the little grass tufts. And here they all are. I can't even begin to describe how pleased I am with how these turned out. They are the perfect complement to my grass tile set, and they make this kind of outdoor environment for encounters that I've been going for all that more real. So I'm very pleased with how they turned out. And if you need any of the materials that I used in this video to kind of do this, don't worry, I've listed them in my description below, and you can feel free to pick them up if you like. I hope you really enjoyed this project. This is one of my favorite ones that I've done so far, and I hope that you find inspiration from this as well. I'm going to go ahead and show a little bit of a montage here just for the end, show you how I've actually used it in a session that I did just last night. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it.